Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Al Mizan Sunday, sponsored by masjidwdm Muhammad, located in Houston, Texas. We occur on the fourth Sunday of each month. First Sunday is the last meeting, and I'm getting some backup sound. I don't know where it's coming from. Okay, I think I've resolved it. Welcome to Al Mizan Sunday. As I said, I did not resolve it. Um, Okay, just a second. I don't know what's happening with the sound, but we'll open up with dua. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة عذاب النار. I'm not seeing anything else that's causing me to have an echo. Today we have Swiyya Haqq, who's an educator, a linguist, advocate, educator. So, Sister Swiyya, are you hearing me double?
I do hear some feedback. Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes it's okay. Like right now, it's okay, but then it'll come and distort.
Okay. Okay, I'm having some technical difficulties. So I'll let you give your introduction since my computer is giving me some technical difficulties.
You sound better now, so I don't know if they've resolved.
Okay.
But no.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I'll go ahead and give your bio. Sister Swiyya Haqq is a dedicated educator and lifelong learner with over 25 years of experience teaching students, elementary and collegiate levels. She holds a master's in applied linguistics and TESOL, along with certification in elementary education, Arabic, and basic Islamic sciences. She has ijazas in Quranic recitation, and she's passionate about accessible Islamic education. Swiyya helped establish her area's only Muslim homeschool co-op. Currently, she's based in Central Illinois, and she teaches at Hafsa Quran Society Islamic Learning Institute. She continues to inspire students in language and Islamic studies. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Swiyya.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I welcome everybody to our topic for discussion today about homeschooling. So, inshallah ta'ala, I will give a brief introduction to homeschooling. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. Inshallah, we ask that Allah allow us to benefit, inshallah, from what I will present to you all, inshallah, and allow it to, inshallah, have benefit for you all and your families. So, inshallah, this will just be a brief discussion about homeschooling. What is it? Why would one do it? And how would one get started? I myself, besides the bio that a sister gave me, I also so I grew up in a public school myself. However, once I had children, or even on the horizon, once I get married, I knew that I wanted to homeschool. I just feel like one, the education system had changed so much from when I was a child, although I have many positive experiences. Time has changed, and I grew up in a small city, but I even from the time I grew up till when I was in the age where I would start thinking about children, things have just changed so much in society and the types of things that happen in school. And so I knew that I wanted to homeschool. Um, so that's my experience. And like the sister said, I have founded the only Muslim homeschooling co-op in my area. So I've been homeschooling now for around 10 years, alhamdulillah. So what is homeschooling? Um, Homeschooling is a method of education that is done at home at a variety of other places, um, rather than traditional school settings, and it is facilitated by the parents. So this definition of homeschooling is quite um, general, right? It doesn't include many parts maybe that someone would think, well, what about this, what about that? So I do want everybody to notice that the definition is very broad. So it, for example, it doesn't give exactly, okay, it says it's done at home or a variety of other places. Homeschooling can be done anywhere, right? And it says it's facilitated by the parents. That means that when you're homeschooling doesn't mean that you teach every single thing to your child. It could mean that you get a tutor. It could mean that you're combined. What it does mean is not only is facilitated, but the parents are responsible for the education of their children, right? And obviously, homeschooling, how it started long ago, the primary way of educating long ago, right? Children were at home. So in between farming or other activities that families did for their survival, right? They would have to be taught things. And what those things were obviously were centered usually around life skills, but it can include many things, right? And I think in homeschooling, when we think of homeschooling, it includes educational experiences, but very experiential in terms of life experience, like many things that you would need to know, kind of like how when children go to school, right, they do learn other things besides what's in that curriculum per se. How to interact with others, how to get up and get ready to go somewhere, and the same thing with homeschooling in general. There are many parts of that. It includes life skills. So that, like I said, that's how education started long ago, and then the public school system started, etc., like the one room schoolhouses, and then public schools, etc. But the current movement that we see, how homeschooling is done in this country today, they say started in the 1960s and 70s, right? And this new movement of home education. And a lot of it was framed in response to dissatisfaction with the public school system. However, we know from our history as African American Muslims, that Sister Clara Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with her, was the first to start doing homeschoolings in 1930s, right? So we say that was so long ago in that. But mashallah, she refused to send her children to public school, and was threatened with arrest if she didn't send them, but she did not. And later, of course, she founded the Clara Muhammad schools. So when we think of homeschooling and we think of possibly doing that, this is a part of our legacy and tradition as Muslims in this country, as African American Muslims. Alhamdulillah, but I mean. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about why homeschooling, right? Why would somebody want to homeschool? Now, I put 3 reasons here, but there are so many, and but it may be something where sometimes people don't even think about it, right? Like, okay, why would someone not want to send their child to the public school system? Like, maybe someone has never ever thought about it before. Sometimes when I talk to families, like, the thought never even came to their mind to do such a thing. You know what I mean? To not enroll their kids in the public school system. And they may be disgruntled about things, but not ever having met somebody who homeschooled, not ever knew that it was a thing, that it was a possibility, subhanAllah. So there are many reasons why. And again, these are 3, but there are so many reasons why people actually homeschool, why they decide to take charge of their children's education. Sometimes it's because they are unhappy with the public school system. And obviously with that comes so many things. Again, I listed 3, but I'm sure everybody, and I would challenge you as I'm going through these 3, inshallah, you guys can put in the chat and you can share other reasons why you think somebody might want to homeschool. Why somebody might want to take their children out of a traditional learning setting, such as a public school or possibly even a private school, and decide to take charge of their child's education and be responsible for it. So again, being unhappy with the public school system means possibly the children are not learning enough. Maybe you see that your child is maybe behind, right? Maybe you see that you're like, okay, my child has been going to school this long, and this is, they spend this many hours a day in school, but yet, they're still behind, or they still don't know certain things that I deem that are important, right? Um, Bullying. Sometimes our children don't feel comfortable in school settings, right? Sometimes um, that bullying may come from other peers. It may even become from an adult, subhanAllah, bullying them, or, a teacher that is not treating them well, Um, so that could be a reason why. And again, when it comes to not learning enough, that also includes situations where perhaps our kids are behind, but that them being behind, that deficit is not being addressed. Like they're behind and they continue to stay behind. Whatever extra support, maybe they're not getting any extra support. If they are getting extra support, it isn't enough. It hasn't changed one iota of the child's it hasn't changed. They take the test, it's still the same, or you notice they're still not reading, or right, like whatever's going on has not allowed them to learn. Also, that the curriculum doesn't align with values. We know that today there are some states that require that as Muslims, that certain things are being taught in the education system that don't align with our values as Muslims, but they are required to teach those things, right? And or even certain things that happen at school where the teacher is required not to tell you, not to let you know what's going on with your child, that your child has privacy for certain matters, that you would never even know that your child may be struggling with something or dealing with something, because they don't have to tell you. So there are definitely things that go on in public school that don't align with our values as Muslims. And again, just giving these reasons why, I always tell people that like homeschooling isn't for everyone. And that you may still have some of these issues that are mentioned here on these reasons, but still find ways to address them inside the public school system. So I always tell people, like, yes, I'm giving the why people would want to homeschool, but I think regardless of whatever educational setting you find your children in, you still have to be parents. You still have to show up every day, and you still have to be active in their education in order to raise responsible human beings, responsible, productive Muslims. You have to show up either way. So I never really liked the juxtaposition of like, yes, people do like to go to homeschool and just drop off their kids, become like the drop off parent, what we say. But if you really want, right, to raise your children the best way, it still requires you to be responsible and to show up, right? To see what your kids are learning, see how their day was, see how who they're hanging out with. Do they have homework that they need help? Are they behind, right? So some of these things still, regardless if you're unable to homeschool because for whatever reason, right, that you still have to be a parent that shows up and addresses these things if homeschool is not the option. So again, those are some reasons. Reason 2, maybe you want to spend more time with your children. Maybe you see them go out, and you don't see them till late evenings. Upon a lot of the school days are long, and then sometimes kids have long hours for commuting, and then after school activities, or perhaps you work, or perhaps you have a certain shift. There's so many reasons why, again, somebody was like, you know what, I want my kids with me at home. I want to spend more time with them. Sometimes people have travel schedules. Sometimes the spouse has to travel, and you say, hey, we're going with them. So we want to take the kids out, and we can educate them on our own. Are there any other reasons, Sister Cindy? Are there any other reasons that people put possibly why somebody may want to homeschool?
I haven't seen anyone enter anything in there, but to me, those are some very good, viable, and rational reasons why
Yes,
someone.
alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. And again, there's so many. I just put 3, but I know there are tons of reasons why people find it beneficial to take charge of their children's education. So if you found yourself in that position, like, what do you do? How do you do it? Because it's very like, how do I take charge of my child's education? Like, some people, when you say that, they're like, well, what? Like, it is a daunting task, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely doable. So I would say the first steps, right? Says, how do I homeschool my children? There are a few steps to follow. However, you start with the why, and that's your attention. You put your trust in Allah, then start Bismillah, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Surah 33, verse 3, وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ وَكِيلًا. And put your trust in Allah, for Allah is sufficient as a trustee of affairs. SubhanAllah. Like the task is big, but once you decide that you're going to do it and you use those whys as your intention. So like, okay, I want to spend more time with my children. So by homeschooling, I intend to spend more time with my children, right? Make that your intention. And so as you begin to go through these next steps that I'm about to give you, hold that intention at the forefront, right? So if you know you want to spend more of your time with your children, then how you schedule your day, what kind of homeschooling philosophy you choose, right? Where everybody does their studies, all of these things will shape how you're going to be able to meet, that your intention will shape all the decisions you make, right? In terms of homeschooling. So really sitting down and thinking about that intention piece is key. Like the reasons why you're doing it and then using those reasons to set intentions is super important, inshallah. And we know as Muslims, we want that every act that we do is an act of worship, and that starts with intention, right? Making our intention, why do we want to spend more time with our kids? Because we want to, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we're responsible for them. We want to have a good relationship with them, right? We want to be able to save them, right? As Allah instructs us in the Quran to save our families from the fire. So this, having this intention and putting it in perspective and relating that back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not only is it going to bring you the greatest amount of reward, but like I said, it'll obviously certainly direct how it is that you go about your journey. So what are some of the steps that you need to follow? So if you decide that you want to homeschool, you see that you have some issues that you're dealing with your child in school, and you're like, how can I solve these issues? And it comes across your mind, okay, I could take them out of that setting completely. What are some of the first steps I need to do, right? If I decide that I want to homeschool, take my child out, trying to address some of the issues they're having in school, or other reasons that I may deem it necessary to do so. The first thing that you need to do is look at the requirements in your state. Look at the homeschool laws and see what they are. These things are usually readily available on your state's Department of Education or state board, the Texas State Board of Education. Illinois is similar. That's where I live. It's similar to Texas. I did a very cursory research. It looks that Illinois and Texas are similar, pretty lenient in terms of homeschooling. Alhamdulillah. So if you're in Texas, or it doesn't matter, but wherever you are, you need to look up what the homeschool laws are. Some states it's a little bit more difficult. Some states, you're watched and you have to submit a lot of detailed lesson plans, and you have to submit. So then it becomes, it's a little bit more difficult. Not saying that it can't be done, but you just may have some red tape that you have to follow. But then there are even some schools that give you money, mashallah, when you homeschool. Just as a note, for most states, you still are paying taxes like everybody else. So that still goes to the schools. It's not like because you're homeschooling, they give you that money back. Although, like I said, some states do give you money. They're like, well, you did pay taxes, etc. You do get this money to buy curriculum, etc. Sometimes in some states, they come and they test your children. You have to make sure that they are actually learning and that they are actually growing. But in other states, like my state, there's very little oversight. Like I didn't have to register my children or anything and say, I'm taking them out of school or I'm not enrolling them in school. I had to do no such thing. Nobody has ever knocked on my door. No one has ever called me. No one, that nothing has happened in that regard. So it really just depends on your state, and you have to look that up. The second thing you need to do is de-school. This is a term, de-school. So what that means is that we're all, like me, I grew up in the public school, and that when you decide that you want to homeschool, you really have to take a shift. Like this new journey is uniquely your own. It does not have to look anything like school, right? It doesn't have to look, you can make it look a lot like school if you want. But I think that's a little bit more difficult. I think it's easier to really be free in the journey and not think of it the same way. When we say deschooling, that means also like, okay, my child is in this grade. They have to be operating at this level, doing these things. Well, even that system, that they have in the public school, often we see that, kids have strengths and weaknesses. So it's not usually that they're, everything is right in the middle. They fit, a lot of times they have things that they're, place up, higher in another grade, and things that they place lower. So it's, very normal that a kid doesn't always perform in these nice little neat boxes. So it's, deschooling, not thinking about your child and what they can do in like a grade specific manner, right? Like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to have a certain time of day you go to school, right? You don't have to have a certain place you go to school. You can have, the sky is the limit. So you have to kind of think like, and even the structure of like, you don't even have to take summer off. You can take a longer break in the winter. You can do as you please. Not with the homeschooling journey, obviously, as long as whatever your state laws don't force you to have a specific schedule. But really just not thinking about it the way school has trained us to think about education and some of the limitations that they have, because they're dealing with a classroom of 30 people or a whole school district of thousands, right? So it's something that we have to really focus to change our focus when we're trying to homeschool. So the third thing after you've done those two is to do research. Some people even recommend, I think the deschooling process is quite lengthy. For some people, it may be short. For other people, it may take them a long time to really get rid of their certain thoughts about what they need to do and how they need to do it. It's related to the educational experience that they had and that their kids once had. For people, it takes a long time. For some people, they recommend taking a break to deschool. And while you're taking that break from school, to just like organize your thoughts. It's okay for your child to take a break. You're going to have to do a lot of research. I provided like a homeschooling resources sheet to Cindy that she can make available. That is like, I'm not going to say tip of the iceberg. There's so many resources, alhamdulillah, out there but it does take time. Here's some questions things that you will start to need to research about. But I put this at the top of the list of finding other homeschoolers near you. This is, the journey, while doable, so doable and possible, you do need some information. You do need to connect with others that are doing the same thing, right? It's going to make it so much easier for you. I remember when I connected people who were doing that when I first started, and I went to a co-op. My daughter was very like 3, 4. The first time that we went to a co-op where other families were gathered together, interested in their child's educational experience and being a part. So I learned so much, like, because we had roles to play, right? Like the co-op means you have roles to play in the co-op and the educating of the children. And I learned so much just being in that setting. Like I learned so much about what it means to homeschool, what it means to be a part of your child's education. And so just being in the space was helpful, but then all the resources, looking at what different curriculums there are that people have, then you can try it, borrow it from a friend before you buy it, or maybe they're trying to sell theirs. Homeschoolers are, because as your children grow, you go from different stages, things change, right? So homeschoolers are constantly getting rid of, well, I worked with that curriculum with my child when they were young. All my kids are grown now. I'm ready to give it up. It's a great curriculum. You can have for free or for a minimal cost, So definitely finding other homeschoolers near you is super important. Things, other research, what will be your style? There are different homeschooling styles, right? There are different homeschooling philosophies. There's different, how children are taught. Some people like the really classical method, looking at strict grammar, the classics, this type of thing. Some people really like the Montessori. There's a way to homeschool in the Montessori style. There's so many different ways. Sometimes some people have homeschooling and they do all online. They go, enroll K through 12. And I even put some of those websites on the homeschooling resource list that where it's really like the kids are in school, but it's like online, which whatever you choose, and that allows you to going back to your intentions and your, and why you decided to take them out of the public school setting in the first place, or the private school setting, wherever the traditional setting was. And so what do you want to do with them? There's so many, you have to find out how you, what style you want to use. Again, the other thing that I said, that another question you want to look at is what curriculums speak to you. There's some Islamic curriculums, there's Afrocentric curriculums, there's so many things again that go back to your style. There's a Montessori curriculums, there's Charlotte Mason, and I put some information about the different styles on that resource list. Do you want to be in a co-op? I'm going to talk about that in a moment. I highly recommend that. What subjects are most important to you? I think one of the things that was super important to me, and one of the reasons why I knew that I wanted to homeschool, is that I wanted my children to have a different perspective on history and what happened in this country and what happened around the world that is often left out and untold. And I think when I was younger, I think they did a better job. Now, they leave out a lot of things, and so that was really important. So looking at so history was like one of the first things that we looked at, and that me as being involved as one of the founders of our co-op, that we were super keen on providing a different look at history. So like, what subjects are important to you? Good. What do you want to teach, and what do you want to find a tutor for or group class for? Again, homeschooling means that you are facilitating your child's education. Could you teach everything? The younger they are, the easier it is to teach everything. Perhaps when they're middle school, you're like, I tapped out on the math. Who's coming to help me? You know what I mean? Like, so it definitely depends on the age of your child. You have to look, what can I do? Or maybe one of your spouses is a math major. You got math covered, but nobody likes to do science. You know what I mean? Like, or nobody's familiar with science curriculums enough or that they can teach. So looking at that is super important. And how will your homeschooling space be? I had a friend that they always went to the library to do homeschooling. And then when they got home, they knew it was playtime and they played, right? Or I have, some families, they do everything on the couch, they do everything on the floor. Some families have a dedicated room. You got your table, the chairs, all the books, the computer, the notebooks, everything's color coded, super nice and neat. What would you like? Right? And there's so many different things. Or if you're at the Montessori method, maybe you set up your room in the Montessori style. So all of that. And again, looking at the age and stage of your children, that will definitely drive some of your research in terms of looking at what style and what type of curriculums you want to look at. One of the things that we use, and it's on the homeschooling resource list, is there's a woman named Kathy Duffy who reviews curriculums. Super, super valuable. So, she'll tell you it's a religious curriculum. It's not a religious curriculum. They do this. They do this. People don't like it for this reason. A lot of pros and cons. It's like a go-to website for a lot of homeschoolers to be able to find. There's also homeschooling conventions where you can go. And again, that's gathering with other homeschoolers. So there's so much out there, but you have to do your research. Okay. And the fourth thing is to experiment. Again, you're deschooling. It's not the traditional thing, right? In a traditional school schedule, you got a schedule, you got those months that the days that the days in the calendar the kids are there. You have certain outcomes that must be met. You have the state standards, all of these things that have to be met. Well, again, you don't have that. Maybe you want to look at some of those things just to see and to make sure, because no matter what, you're going to do more, alhamdulillah, because it's one-on-one thing, or at least if it's a small group, but you're going to be spending more time in a way. So there's no question that you're going to give them more. But it's yours. So you decide on what you want to do and try it out one step at a time, right? You have that faith, right? You're going to make a lot of dua. You're going to have a lot of patience, right? And have that faith in Allah that it's going to be fine. Have that tawakkul, right? But take it one step at a time. Alhamdulillah, it's okay. You try something. Say it didn't work for your family. Okay, we're scrapping that. You gave it sufficient time. Like, we don't like that. Maybe you gave it a week. You're like, we don't like that curriculum, and you move on, right? Or maybe you say, okay, well, I'm not sure yet. Let me give it a little bit more time. Oh, I think I like that. I'm going to stay with it. It was hard to get used to, but my child is thriving. I don't like to prepare that much, or it was too much to do this, but look at what my child is thriving. I think I'm going to stick with it. So you really have to not be afraid to be flexible, try something. And then if it doesn't work, it's okay. Alhamdulillah, try something else, right? Try something else. And also different things where if you have multiple children you're homeschooling, something may work for somebody else and not work for another child. So you just have to be flexible and willing to try. And that's one of the beautiful parts. But they're not, that's not happening for most children at the public school where, well, they can't. It's just not that it's not happening, but it's impossible to do when you have a class of 30 children, right? So with this, when you're doing homeschooling, you do have the ability to cater to your children, cater to individual children. Even if you're on a co-op setting, because the classes are small, there's things that can be catered to the children, meet the children where they are. So learn your children as you spend the time with them and you're experimenting. See what type of learners they are. Are they visual? Maybe you don't even know that yet, right? Because you haven't been in that type of educational space with your children. You may not even know, are they visual learning? Are they audible learning? Do they do better by writing things down? Do they do better by seeing? Do they not even know how to sit still? Maybe you can see somebody like, I thought I knew this at home, but maybe you didn't know, right? Or maybe you didn't get that type of feedback, but you see at home that you need to find something else to do for hands-on because it's difficult for them to focus. Or just really be flexible, learning your children, take your time, relax with the process, right? You can't be too stressed. You have to relax and enjoy. So that fourth part, and it'll take time. This takes time. And again, there's so many changes with different children, different times of the year, etc. So don't be afraid to experiment with new things. Excellent. So I just want to put a little plug for homeschool co-ops, for cooperatives. What is a homeschool co-op? So it's a group of families who gather to homeschool their children, each family working together to meet the needs of the individuals and the group. To meet the needs of the individuals and the group. I highly recommend people are a part of the homeschool co-op that you find one that fits your needs. There are so many, again, like for example, the public library is a good resource for homeschooling, obviously, right? I mean, alhamdulillah, I'm always shocked when I go into our public library at the different things they have and the different resources they have. So I always recommend going in there. But like, for example, they have lists, of homeschooling groups in the area, and I remember I was searching something and like our Muslim homeschool co-op is listed, like, it's like, oh, okay. They realize that they are a big resource for families who are homeschooling, and they try and make sure they have enough information around and things for homeschooling families and individuals. So that's a resource to go to try and find other homeschool co-ops, to see what the homeschool co-ops are in your area. Not, there are religious ones, there are Christian ones, there are ones that are specifically secular. That you'll probably have variety. In my small city, we had such a variety of homeschooling co-ops. There's so many. We were the first, and we're still the only Muslim homeschool co-op. But you'll find there's some that are, strictly Montessori, some that are strictly Charlotte Mason, some that are strictly on that classical trivium homeschooling style that I mentioned. So you just have to look around and find one. So I recommend that you decide what your style is, and maybe you don't know, maybe you're going to go and observe. Do I like this one? And usually they're super open because they know how, what this task is like of homeschools that are open. They'll let you come and observe and see, and then you can that'll help you decide which style you are, right? What you like, what you don't like, even what the kids may like and not like. They usually let families observe and visit. So find one, and then find one that aligns with what you believe. Maybe you don't have a Muslim homeschooling co-op in your area, but maybe you have one that is secular. Maybe you have one that's a Christian one but their still values align, and they don't. You can manage. You can manage. But I would definitely look into it, or establish one for yourself. Establish the Muslim co-op. You'd be surprised how many people will join you. Maybe they didn't know how to do it, or they were scared, because that fear factor is huge. So having that, finding people helps to take care, obviously trusting Allah first, making dua and having patience, and trusting Allah helps with the fear completely. But finding other people who are doing the same thing and going through the same thing also really helps with that fear part, and trying to figure out what's going on, because you can do it together. Everybody's working together for the goal of educating their children. So you join it, you participate. It's really important, like in our co-op, like for other children, when they see their parents teaching others, teaching themselves and teaching others, right? They learn several things in that experience, right? They learn to see their parents in a slightly different way, right? First of all, it's new anyway for them to see their parents as their teacher if they were in a public school setting before. But then also seeing them teach other children and give to other children and being patient while their mom is in a different capacity. So participating brings a lot of benefit, right? And you participate, like I said, it teaches your children, and it's so, and then just, giving back. Like, if you belong to a co-op and you decide, you know what, I think it's really important that the kids learn how to sew, and I know how to sew. Well, I'm going to teach them how to sew. And I had trouble with that project at home, but now I'm in the co-op, and now I can have a more steady schedule of teaching my kids to sew. I'm going to teach my kids to sew and other children to sew. And that helps with my schedule, and it helps, so really participating often benefits the families, because it's hard to schedule everything. It's hard to do everything. But when you have to go to the co-op and you're teaching other kids, it gets you on your schedule and allows you to meet the goals and needs that you have for your own family, as well as inviting other children and families to do the same. And Allah is with the Jama'ah, is with the group. So it definitely has benefits. SubhanAllah, in my experience, we meet a lot of times in the masjid, and like literally we'll need something. Say we're trying to figure out, we got some problems with a computer. It's Dhuhr time, and this brother come in, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's a computer science," or what I mean. And then he just sends us who we need. So there's just so much blessing in being in the group, right? And then if you're at the masjid or some other space, and the kids are getting to pray, and it's a really beautiful thing. And again, it's a huge benefit for the family and everyone else that is involved. But I say that again, with the co-op, the only caution I give is you finding the balance for your family. Our own co-op has been through so many changes in terms of like, we started off with going only 2 days a week, and we didn't have any tutors or hired teachers. Everything was taught by the parents, and then you went home and did other work, right? Which was fine. We loved it. We grew a little bit and decided we wanted to go a few more days of the week. Then we got really, into more what I felt like was too close to a school type setting. It wasn't a school, and the parents were still involved, but it has shifted a little bit too much. So then we went back the other direction, but so you have to find the space that fits well with what you want. And maybe that's an experience, you experiment. That co-op meets too often. I don't want that. I tried it, and we was out just ripping and running every day, right? So just, again, with the homeschool co-op, experiment and find the one that works with you. Or if you end up establishing one, you get with the parents and decide how you all want to do things and how you want to establish things for the co-op and the family. Okay. And then I think that's it. If anybody has any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer them.
I didn't see any. I'm going to leave your number up there for a minute.
Okay.
So if anyone or any email before I pull it out. But I didn't see any questions come through the chat. But I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
As a mom, now grandmom, I did not homeschool my daughter, but thinking back, raising a young Muslim girl in a public school environment, and the impact that's had on her. We had weekend school. Weekend is 1 day a week. Weekend school is normally 1 day a week at the masjid, and she had 5 whole days of public school. And I'll bring myself in, so you won't feel alone.
Thank you.
It was, I spent a lot of my time at home trying to combat the things she came home with from school that were, didn't fit our moral values, or things that, especially, I lived out in the suburbs of Houston, things that weren't inspiring her as an African-American female. So I would have to, make sure I taught her about her history, her culture, her family's history, and a lot of things I had to supplement anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
you got to do it anyway. That's what I'm saying. It's a part of being a parent.
The culture that we're in it's almost, I was a single mom, so I just felt like this was out of my range. But now, just listening to you, I probably could put more structure to what I was teaching her. I was just like, what are they not doing? Okay, let me do that. But I didn't have any real intentions behind it. So I like how when you started out, you said, let your whys drive you. So I'm thinking even for those who are unable or not in a position to homeschool their kids, there's still things that you can teach them and organize it in a fashion where it's just not a haphazard, let's sit down to dinner and talk about this subject. But
Absolutely.
you're
Absolutely.
intentional about what you're teaching your children, and you have sort of a plan for how to get this information into your children, or these values, or these, you know, core things that you want your children to learn that they're not getting in the public school system, or combat the things they are getting.
Right. No, and I like that you said, I think this is so important. I think with the Zoom, and the virtual thing, there's just so many options and so many ways to connect with other people. And like
Right.
you said, and the time, it could be in the evening.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It could be, in some of the resources I sent, there's some like some really good curriculums that have like online course that a kid could sign up for. Like there's like a
Right.
history one. It's called woke education. Woke I think it's education, and they have some really nice history things that it's online, and the child can go at their own, the modules, they can go at their own pace.
Right.
And then like you said, okay, I know they're not getting this, let me
Right.
find like how they can, and you could sit with them. I think the way that one works, it has some modules online, but then you also have the book and curriculum, and you're going over with your child at the same time.
Right.
So absolutely, I think that's again, I think, and when it's necessary in this day and age, like you said, combating and filling the gaps, or even
right.
how people find, enrichment. I know my child needs help. I'm going to send them to reading help at Kumon or at Mathnasium, or all those things. I think all of that is part of this. Really part of this game of being responsible, not game, but this responsibility, right? Of owning your child's education and what you want them to achieve and be and learn in life.
Alhamdulillah for you and others in the communities, male and female, who are taking on the responsibility and just the accountability for our children, because most of us, we do what our parents did, and it's the school's job. I gave you breakfast, I put you on the bus, and between 8 and 3, it's up to them what you get, kind of thing, versus taking accountability for what are my kids getting, what are they not getting, and then saying, how do I fill the gap? Or do I need to pull my child? I have a couple special needs grandchildren who and this is very interesting subject for me, because as a grandma, I'm thinking, I might need to be the homeschooler, just so that not only academically they're in an environment where they're thriving, but just so some of their special needs aren't interfering as much with what they're responsible for, what those professionals at their school are responsible for. But then it also reminded me, everybody's not suited to be a homeschooler.
I agree with you.
So I like the co-op idea and the working with other parents, knowing what your strengths are, and helping people to help you with those, not just giving up altogether, saying, my kids get on my nerves, I can't do it.
Right. No.
Just saying,
they are going to get on. Right. We know that. That's a given. That's a given.
So, but knowing you have a group of people to support you, I love that. It's like, okay, don't give up yet.
Don't give up yet.
Don't give up before you even start, because the shaitan will do that to you. He'll give you the list of you're not good at math, and you don't have patience, and I have a list this long and this list like this of why I should, versus, so the shaitan will work on you and have you thinking, no, keep your kids in that environment. It's okay. It's not, you went to public school, what's wrong with it? So I like everything you were saying. Was just, it's a daily dollar shirt for me and my child, but maybe not my grandchildren, or assisting with someone else in their homeschooling journey, especially the Muslims, our Muslimas, and our young men need direction these days more than ever. And,
they do. And it's a reality that if we don't give it to them, the society is going to give it to them.
It definitely will.
What they deem as important.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying, either way, you got to do something, because.
So what kind of metrics is used as it relates to measuring their knowledge, or how is that? managed? Because I know in public school they're always, taking tests and
Yes.
measuring and this, that, and the other.
Well, I think this is a little bit a part of like the deschooling trap, because I think on a few levels. One, I think the results, when you get those results, I think sometimes they're beneficial, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're beneficial.
Right.
Sometimes a child does have a deficit in an area, but that child shouldn't be made to feel like they're behind. Like, again, kids have strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
So I think that some people use it as a reason. Well, my kid has scored low in this area all this time for 2-3 years now, and it's not getting any better. So it can give you some information, but I always say, like, okay, I think as an information tool, it's good, but not as like a judgment tool. Like I think you have to be really careful using the testing in that way. I think when kids are super young, I don't think it's as beneficial. I think you should let the kids be until they get maybe upper elementary, middle school, before starting to sort of burden them with these type of tests. But when you do, and I put this resource on there, and our co-op, and there's this organization it's called Homeschool Boss. They have worked out testing rights with MAP testing, which all the schools use across the country. It's called MAP. And you can get your child tested with a MAP test.
Okay.
Through that organization. It's called Homeschool Boss. And so we do it for our older kids. Again, as an information piece, what are our kids missing? The MAP testing has it gives you a very detailed, it has all these strands, of, the topic of math, all these different strands of different math topics and where the child is doing in that. So then now you have some information. So if you do it, it's very good for, information in terms of, okay, I can find something to address this hole. Or when you work with the student, you're like, well, maybe they do knew that. That was just, they had a bad testing that day, or maybe the question was worded weirdly. I see they're okay, but I can look into it. So I think they're good for information's sake.
Right.
But just to have to be careful with how you judge a child to make the child feel as a result of them. I think again, just about the piece that, like, I think it's natural that students have strengths and weaknesses too. So it isn't a way for you to know, like, okay, I could work on this.
Right. Especially if it's your first time as a homeschooling parent, and
if you're really worried about them being sort of behind.
Right.
But I think you'll find, okay, like after you've been homeschooling for a little bit, you'll see the meter move. You know what I mean?
Right.
You'll see.
So I did put the link to the homeschooling resource document in the chat. So if anyone in the comment section, so if anyone that's listening or listens in the future, you can go to that link, and the hyperlinks are active. So it's a PDF, but the hyperlinks are active in there. So
good. I have one other thing I want to mention. You mentioned the special education piece. I have a friend, one of our actually founders of the co-op, whose youngest son has dyslexia. And so she's had to take a few different journeys with homeschooling. She started out homeschooling him. She didn't know. She started detecting, okay, something may be wrong. There may be something, right? And I think you're quicker able, if you start off homeschooling your children younger, you're probably quicker able to realize that than maybe they would diagnose in the public school. They take time. And she started to realize, okay, maybe something's wrong, but when she did find out and she got her diagnosis, like you said, she felt like, okay, I don't think I can handle this. I'm not trained. She put him back in the public school to get services. He was still in elementary. These services that they do provide our children are vastly different depending on the school and depending on the educator in that special needs classroom. And then, but she still had to combat the fact that in that special needs classroom, we know who's usually present. Oftentimes, there are behavioral issues that may or may not be the result. Sometimes behavior is the result of the learning challenge, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's other things going on. So she really had to combat the fact that, okay, I'm putting my child in this environment. Things are always a little crazy in that room.
Right.
Is he getting what he needs? Are they able? Okay, well, they weren't trained properly in dyslexia. After a few years, she found, and she really didn't want him to be the homeschool, the school environment of the middle school is a little bit more treacherous than elementary. So by middle school, he went for a little bit, but then she discovered they're not moving his needle. They're not helping him with his learning disability. She took him out. She educated herself. She founded a camp for dyslexia in the area. What I mean? So I think that part about being present, knowing if your child's disability, there's still things you could do. You would still get trained. Sometimes there are free resources to get trained, figure out to how to help your child. You have to be their advocate, even if, like, she had to be really talking to those the educators. Is he getting his hours? Is he doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Still, really, even if you let them do it, like we talked about before, you still have to be a really big advocate for your child. And then you may find that in the end, you still can do a better job. Maybe you found a tutor that worked with your child better than the public school system did. So maybe you're not doing it, but maybe you find someone, or maybe you get trained. So just because they have a disability, it still may mean that you're better able to help them, depending on the school district and the system, because there are some that are really amazing. But sometimes it's still, they're still not able to help your child. So you really have to do your research and see how that falls. But don't think that just because they have the disability that you can't help them.
Right. There was one question that finally come through saying, what would be the cost range? And I think that means
for
homeschooling in general. Yes.
I think it varies vastly. Like, I'm talking because goes back to that philosophy again. One of the philosophies that I recommend, I didn't go through them all, is like the eclectic style. You find out what you need. You know what I mean? Like, what works best for your family, and the things that you want to accomplish.
Right.
And you found an inexpensive way to do that. Like, because everything. So I think it really does vary. And now if you're in the co-op, like I said, you got families that have already done this before. Like, for example, our co-op doing this for now 9 years, we have a lot of resources we can pass on, a lot of things we let our parents borrow. So where you're not paying, we do have some fees for the co-op, but it's not, it's minimal. So I think it varies gradually. But if you want to, for example, if you want to do the Montessori style, you could do the Montessori style while buying all the Montessori materials. They can get really expensive. Or you can do Montessori style by making all your materials. That's also an option. So I think it really is something that when we talk about this is your journey unique to you, that cost piece is also relative. And again, everything is a learning experience.
Yes.
So you can take your kids there's so many resources in terms of taking to your kids, the free activities, look up stuff. You know what I mean? To find, like, we have this website called, we live in the Twin City area, Champaign Moms. They have this list of like, what's going on. It's updating. There's so many education opportunities, so many things that are free. You go, you do that. They get hands-on activity. They learn. You go to the library, read another book about it, do this writing activity, do this. You're done. They had a whole unit about something. Everything was free. Right. So I think you really have to broaden your horizons. Yeah. There's ways that it could be quite inexpensive, or ways that could be very expensive if you want to spend a lot of money.
Right. Alhamdulillah. Well, it's been a joy talking with you and getting all the information from inside of your head. But I'm so glad you gave us this resource sheet, because it can be very valuable for any parents that are watching. And now, the reach by us doing these virtual ta'aleems, the reach is, far more reaching than doing one in a, closed-in setting where we have we may have parents from Houston to Atlanta watching this saying, hey, I have been interested in homeschooling and maybe this is something I can take on, especially if I can get together with some other sisters, or just the morals piece and our kids being with like-minded individuals from like-minded families that have very similar, ways of operating, our heritage, as well as our religious beliefs, our religious culture, our religious practices, is invaluable. So thank you so much, alhamdulillah, for you coming on, especially following your presentations at the Quranic Symposium. We wanted to bring you on just so you could expand some of the ideas that were brought up there, just to give a parent who may be listening an opportunity to just delve a little bit deeper into the subject and the possibilities that homeschooling, because we don't have a full-time Islamic school in Houston in the WDM community, but this may be a viable option, at least until that time we get that
Exactly. And that's how you grow. Like I was thinking of Sister Claire Muhammad. That's how she started. Then eventually we had the Claire Muhammad schools.
Right.
And for certain, like our area, they just now are getting, we're just now having Islamic school. But a lot of that is possible for sure for the work that our co-op did. There's no question. And putting that in the minds and hearts of the community, that for sure that this is something that we need, and that, they saw our kids, they've seen, it's so important. So absolutely. It's definitely a precursor.
Well, I want to thank everyone in our listening audience for tuning in and listening to us, and those who may listen in the future. And I want to thank you again, Sister Swiyya. Alhamdulillah, thank you so much. Shukran for joining us. And we're going to end our Taleem now. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.